My name is Lu Yu. My wife, Jung No-win, and I were childhood sweethearts, promised to each other since we were young. In the 3rd year of our marriage, she hired her college crush as her assistant. I told her to fire him immediately, but she refused, and we ended up in a Cold War. More than 6 months later, when my mother became terminally ill, her last wish was to see No-won, pregnant with my child, before she passed. I went to No-won to reconcile, and after thinking it over, she agreed. A month later, she was pregnant. But just as my mother was fading and wanted to see No-won's belly one last time, I received the news that she'd had a miscarriage after donating blood to her old crush. Luckily, I already had another child outside of our marriage. At my mother's funeral, the atmosphere was heavy. People behind me whispered and cast strange looks because standing where my wife should have been was my mistress, Han Jing, holding my child in her arms. She took No-won's place in sending my mother off on her final journey. After the funeral, my father-in-law stopped me. Lu Yu, it was your mother's funeral, so I said nothing then. But what was the meaning of bringing your mistress and illegitimate child there? Have you thought about the impact on our 2 companies? He was furious, not because of my affair, but because I'd publicly allowed Han to appear as if she were the new daughter-in-law. That sent a clear signal to everyone. The mistress of the Lu family was about to change. Leaning casually against the sofa, said Uncle Jang, I had no choice. Your daughter lost our baby for that pretty boy and she's still in the hospital. I couldn't let my mother die without peace of mind. Besides, even if No-won had shown up, people would still have things to say. Father Jang's face darkened. He knew about the male assistant, but hadn't pushed it since I'd stayed silent before. Affairs were common among the wealthy, after all. But this time, No-won had gone too far, causing a miscarriage by donating blood for another man and missing my mother's final moments. The fact that I called him uncle instead of father showed just how angry I was. But he still had to fix the situation. He took a breath and softened his tone. Uncle knows No-won went too far, but bringing your mistress to the funeral made her lose face. For my sake, can you forgive her this once? If you 2 divorce, it'll hurt both our companies. I said nothing and took a stack of photos from my bag, placing them in front of him. His expression darkened as he looked through them. Young girls he recognized. They were his illegitimate daughters. The rest, he could guess. Lu, what's the meaning of this? He demanded. I smiled lightly. Uncle Jang, you misunderstand, eh? Glared at me, clearly thinking I was trying to threaten him, but I wasn't that foolish. Everyone knew he and his wife had their own affairs, even if she saw those photos. She wouldn't care as long as the inheritance stayed with NU. And No-won, his expression softened slightly. He realized I wasn't trying to blackmail him. Then what do you mean? He asked. The marriage alliance continues, I said, just with a different bride. He understood immediately. The Jang and Lu families would still be tied by marriage, but instead of Jang No-won, it would be one of his illegitimate daughters. The Jang Corporation would stay under his control either way. The only ones who'd object would be No-won and her mother, but they didn't hold much power. As long as he had my cooperation, there wouldn't be an uproar. Still, he wanted to confirm. You're really giving up on No-won? I nodded. I've made up my mind. Both families were powerful and deeply connected. A breakup would cost us dearly. And taking over the Jang Corporation outright was personally controlled by Father Jang. For someone like me, it was enough just to avoid being outsmarted by an old fox like him. He thought for a long moment, his expression shifting. Finally, he asked, which one have you chosen? I pointed to a photo. This one. He looked at it and muttered under his breath. You little bastard. In the photo, a young woman was walking on a college campus. Her smile bright and radiant, innocent, yet captivating. After finishing the discussion, I drove to Han Jing's place. As soon as I walked in, she came forward gracefully, took my coat, and hung it up for me. When I noticed she was the only one home, I asked casually, "Why are you alone?" "Where's the nanny?" Han Jing gave a sly smile. "I knew you were coming, so I gave her the afternoon off." I walked toward the room. Little Bo was lying in his crib, playing with a small toy, turning it over and over. When he saw me, his chubby face lit up with a smile, his round eyes curving into little crescent moons. I played with him for a while, and then suddenly felt a soft touch from behind. I turned and pulled Han-Win into my arms, pressing my forehead against hers. "It must be hard taking care of the baby," I murmured. She smiled gently. "It's not hard as long as you come to see me more often." After holding each other for a while, I led her into the next room. The next morning, Jung No-en burst into the conference room in a rage. Because of her miscarriage and the blood loss from donating to that man, she looked frail and pale, though anger gave her cheeks an unnatural flush. The assistant hurried in, flustered. President Madame insisted on coming up. I couldn't stop her. "It's fine," I said, waving my hand to dismiss him. Technically, Han-Win and I weren't divorced yet, so no one dared to stop her. I didn't want to make things harder for the staff, so I said, "Let's adjourn the meeting." Everyone quickly filed out, leaving just the two of us in the room. The moment the door closed, Nwaniwan exploded. "Lou, you've really got some nerve. Not only do you have a mistress, but you've even fathered an illegitimate child." I met her fury with calm indifference. "So what? You can keep your little pretty boy, but I can't have someone who actually understands me. Don't be such a hypocrite." She slammed the table so hard it echoed through the room. "How many times have I told you there's nothing between me and Xiao Wenbin? I just felt sorry for him and wanted to help him." I gave a cold laugh. "Do you even believe that yourself? Nothing going on? You donated blood for him and lost our child because of it. You act so self-righteous, but you can't even admit your mistakes. It's pathetic." Her eyes burned with tears and anger. "Xiao Wenbin was hospitalized because he was protecting me in that car accident. Was I supposed to just stand there and watch him die? There's nothing between us, Lou. You're just being petty. And while we're at it, what about your mistress? For over a year, you've been staying out for days. Were you with her all that time?" The more she spoke, the angrier she became, as if I were the only one who had done something unforgivable. Maybe she was right to think that way once, but those days were gone. We were childhood sweethearts after all. When we were kids, both our families were single-child households under the national policy. And our parents arranged our engagement early on. They even agreed that we'd have 2 children, one to take my surname Liu and the other to take hers, Zhang, each inheriting a family business. When we were little, Nwaniwan didn't even understand what marriage meant. She just knew that I was the one she was supposed to spend her life with. She followed me everywhere like a little tail. Sometimes I got annoyed and called her my shadow. She'd pout and say, "I'll follow you anyway." We grew up together through elementary, middle, high school, even university. Right after coming of age, we crossed that final line together. I still remember her curled up in my arms, making me promise over and over that I would never betray her. I knew even then she had deep insecurities. Her parents were both unfaithful. Her father had one young secretary after another, some even younger than she was. Her mother was no better, moving from one man to the next. Neither of them cared much about her. Even when they did see her, all they ever said was, "Keep up the good work." My family wasn't perfect either, but it was a little more stable. My mother came from a scholarly family and stayed home to raise me. My father had affairs too, but as long as he kept them discreet, my mother looked the other way. Despite his flings, he never fathered any illegitimate children. Because of that, Nwaniwan treated my mother as her own, and saw me as her only anchor in life. At 18, she couldn't understand why her mother would live such a degrading life, submitting to man after man. She swore she'd never live like her parents, never a lonely wife like my mother, and never a plaything like hers. That's why, in college, she kept me on a short leash, terrified some other woman would take me away. But then Xiao Wenbin appeared, thinking about all we'd been through. I wanted to explain everything clearly to her one last time. "Nwaniwan," I said, "do you remember Dragon Raja, that story we used to read together in middle school?" She frowned, confused. "What does that have to do with anything?" "There's a line in it," I said slowly. "For a boy, falling in love with a girl is too easy. As long as she's beautiful enough, there are 1,000 reasons to like her smile, her gentleness, her intelligence, even her loneliness. But all of that only matters if she's beautiful to him. I grew up with you, Yuan, but that doesn't mean I can't be drawn to someone else. Han Jing was our senior in college, beautiful, elegant, everything I liked. Falling for her was almost effortless. I looked her in the eyes, and when I found out you liked Xiao Wenbin back in college, I didn't even get angry. Because no one can be attracted to just one person forever. Back then, Xiao Wenbin was her senior in the same department. The first time I ever heard his name was from her. She used to tell me about him endlessly, how he looked just like the male lead in one of her favorite romance novels. She even told me the plot. A poor but handsome student falls in love with a rich girl, hides his feelings because of his low status, then becomes successful and marries her after her heartbreak. Meanwhile, her childhood sweetheart regrets losing her forever. Even then, I knew she was hinting at me, telling me to cherish her before it was too late. I just smiled, patted her head, didn't say what I really thought, that those stories were all lies in real life. Success doesn't come from love, it comes from power, connections, and strategy. Without those, starting from nothing is nearly impossible. And even if you make it, someone stronger will always be there to take it away. What started as a small flirtation turned into something bigger when Zhang Nguyen and Zhao Wenbin ended up in the same research group. Her name started coming up more and more. She'd talk about how he came from a poor village, how his sister worked hard to pay his tuition, how he wanted to repay his family someday. She repeated his stories to me as if they were gospel. Honestly, it sounded like a fairy tale. If he had time to tell me about noble sacrifice, he'd be better off taking another job or two. Eventually, I got tired of hearing it. And I also realized Nguyen felt something for him. So I said plainly, if you like him, keep him as your plaything, fine. After that, she never mentioned Zhao Wenbin's name around me again. Still, I checked on her occasionally, just to make sure nothing was actually going on. I didn't expect him to show up years later, the first time I saw him again. I could tell his plan. He intended to live off Zhang Nguyen. She protested, there's nothing between me and Zhao Wenbin. I don't even like him. I only felt sorry for him because his family is poor. I didn't buy it. He's an adult with hands and feet. Does he have no job? Is someone in his family dying? I snapped. That wasn't the point. I turned serious. After he joined Nguyen's group, you put him by your side as an assistant. I told you to fire him, and you refused. I gave you the chance. I don't care if you have feelings for someone else, but you shouldn't have kept him close. Nguyen's face went pale. Seeing her like that sparked something in me, a desire for retribution. I said bluntly, do you know when I started seeing Han Jing? The very day you rejected me. You rejected me, and that same day, I had someone find her. That night, I stayed at her place. Honestly, you gave me a reason to cheat and feel justified? She accused me of making excuses. I stared coldly and said, think what you want. I warned you before we married. Our circle faces temptations others don't. If you couldn't be faithful, just tell me. Have the child, and we can part ways as friends. Instead, you kept the man you gushed about in college right next to you. You miscarried because you donated blood for him and missed my mother's last moments. Yet you insist you're innocent. What are you trying to do, have the best of both worlds? That's shameless. Nguyen was stunned. After a long pause, she finally said, fine. I'll fire Xiao Wenbin, and you send that woman Han Jing away. I won't hold the child against you. I'll even give her money as long as she never shows up again. We'll start over, okay? Her voice cracked, tears welling up as if she'd been horribly wronged. I refused flat out. No, that woman is after your money. Why else be a mistress? Nguyen slapped me, stunned, clutching her face with red-rimmed eyes. There was something about Han Jing I'd never told anyone. Back in college, my mother was hospitalized. One day I saw Han downstairs, and curious followed her. I discovered her mother was a patient too, but while my mother was in a VIP room, Han mother was in a crowded corridor getting an IV. After talking to the doctor, learned Han family couldn't afford proper surgery. I was younger then and felt compelled to help. I secretly paid for the surgery and never revealed it was from me. When I reconnected with Hanwin recently, I had someone pull the hospital payment records. After she thanked me, I offered long-term support. She was surprised, but accepted. Over the year we were together, she was gentle, unassuming, never demanding. In private, she was different from Nuanawan. Where Nuan was reserved, Hanwin was responsive and loving. Over time, she'd carved out a place in my heart. Nuanuan's accusation made me furious. I rubbed my temples and told her, "Don't forget what you did to my mother. My mother treated you like her own. She wanted to see you one last time before she died. You were out donating blood for that pretty boy, almost costing her that chance. My mother died at peace because she knew I could live without you. Your 3-month belly meant nothing compared to a living grandson in my arms. You almost robbed her of her last wish." Wasn't sentimental. If she wouldn't bear my child, there were other women who would. Still, her actions were unforgivable. She'd nearly robbed my mother of peace. She should feel the guilt, and she should be kept away from Hanwin and Little Bo. I planned to move Hanwin and the child to a new place and arrange bodyguards. Then I had 2 female employees escort Nguyen out and contacted a lawyer to start divorce proceedings with Father Jang's help. With his influence, getting her signature wouldn't be hard. About a week later, Father Jang came by with the signed divorce papers. A woman was with him. No, woman wasn't the right word. Girl was more accurate. Father Jang's face didn't look good, and there were several scratch marks across it clearly from Mother Jang. He shot me an unhappy look and said, "This is my daughter, Jang Meow Meow. You two should get to know each other." When Father Jang left, I looked at the girl in front of me. From my investigation, she was only 19, just starting her first year of college. She was the most beautiful of Father Jang's illegitimate daughters and had never had a boyfriend. Since this was going to be a marriage of convenience anyway, I figured I might as well choose someone who pleased me. But to make sure she knew her place and didn't get carried away after marriage, I decided to warn her first. I put on a stern face and said, "Your father should have already told you why you're here." Zhang Yao nodded, her bright eyes locked on mine. "My father said you want to marry me? Don't worry. As long as you marry me, I'll be obedient. I'm clean. You can inspect the goods first." I was a little surprised. This girl was sharp. Maybe no warning was even necessary. But her offer of an inspection interested me, so I didn't stand on ceremony and took her upstairs. A few days later, to my surprise, Xiao Wenbin ambushed me on the road. My driver was stopped at a red light when he appeared, bruised and pounding on my car window. According to my information, Father Jang's men had already beaten him and threatened his life to make Jang Noanan sign the divorce papers. I couldn't understand how he still had the guts to come to me after that lesson. Before Zhang Nuanuan's miscarriage, I had never taken him seriously. In our circle, as long as a mistress wasn't flaunted in front of the legal wife, no one cared. But because he'd been part of what caused her miscarriage, I was willing to hear him out one last time. In a coffee shop, we sat face to face. After my bodyguard searched him to make sure he wasn't carrying a weapon, we began. I wasn't being paranoid. One of my friends had recently become obsessed with short stories about doppelgangers and kept warning me that the blade of the other woman was like an imperial weapon. So I'd been more cautious lately. Han Wenjing didn't count. She was my confidant. As soon as Zhao Wenbin sat down, he spoke impatiently. "Mr. Liu, I came here to tell you something. President Jiang has always loved you. I was just a tool she used to provoke you." I looked at him with a half smile. "Tell me more." His eyes glinted, his tone excited. "When President Jiang asked me to be her assistant, she said you were too busy with work and rarely communicated with her after marriage. She wanted to use me to provoke you, to make you pay more attention. She specifically warned me not to have any improper thoughts. I'm here to explain and hope you'll forgive her for her little act." I thought about his words. After our marriage, I really had been buried in work, even to the point where I'd just sleep with Zhang Nuan and roll over. That was my failure as a husband, even if I was doing it to gain control of the company quickly. Unlike her, who could be kicked out by Father Jiang after the divorce, I had no excuse to neglect her. But even if her motives were as he described, I couldn't forgive her. There are many ways to get attention: talk to me, argue, throw a tantrum, anything but not this. After 20 years together, even if love had faded into family affection, I'd have tolerated her moods. But to love me by finding a man to toy with? How twisted do you have to be to come up with that? And I didn't believe him anyway. Before I could speak, Zhang Nouan rushed in. "Brother Lu." Xiao Wenbin explained everything. "You should believe we're innocent now." Her face was streaked with tears, haggard. Brother Lu, a name she'd only used back in elementary school. I came back to myself. Zhang Nouan. Maybe you kept Xiao Wenbin around for the reasons he mentioned. But I don't believe you'd keep him as your assistant for a year if there weren't other intentions. And you know the saying, once suspicion is born, the crime is established. There's no chance for us. I got up to leave. As I reached the door, police officers rushed in and handcuffed Xiao Wenbin. "What are you doing?" Zhang Nouan tried to grab at the police. My bodyguard stepped forward, pinning her arms behind her back and pushing her onto the table. I walked over and looked down at her. "I had someone investigate. That car accident you mentioned was staged by Xiao Wenbin, probably to make you feel guilty?" Her pupils contracted. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Lu, come back. Explain. Hubby," she screamed. I strode out of the coffee shop. I'd done my duty to Zhang Nouan. I took out my phone and texted Father Zhang. "Nouan hasn't been mentally well lately. It's best to send her abroad to recover. As for Xiao Wenbin, he'd cost me my child." I had no plans to let him go. Originally, I'd thought of finding a woman with AIDS to seduce him. Once infected, I'd expose it and make him wish for death. I didn't expect the police to discover first that he'd staged the accident. In prison, they'll find out about his illness soon enough. Lucky for him, I am rich. I'm rich, Mr. Lu. No hubby is so generous. Looking at the black card in my hand, I kissed it over and over, forcing myself to ignore the pain in my body. I took a taxi to an ATM to check the balance. 2 million? With that much, how many designer bags could I buy? No, my mother taught me to buy a house first, to give myself a safety net. Forget it. I'll buy a car first. It's cooler, and I can be available whenever hubby wants me. I'd known since I was little that I was the daughter of a mistress. Every time my father came to see my mother, she'd send me out to play by myself. As my mother aged, my father came less and less. She taught me not to be useless like Hergood, only to be a mistress and abandon when old. She said I had to find a rich man and secure my position. I was different from her. Even as an illegitimate daughter, the chairman of the Zhang group was still my father. I was prettier than her, and I knew it. If I could meet some rich heir who wasn't too smart, maybe I could use my father's name and become his official wife. To make that happen, my mother taught me every trick she had learned over the years to attract men. When I started college, I was just about to find someone to practice on when something unexpected happened. My father, the man who had been absent from my life for almost 10 years, suddenly showed up. He said he wanted to introduce me to a husband. After not seeing him for so long, I got scared. I thought he might marry me off to some old, ugly man. My heart sank. But when I saw the bodyguards beside him, I didn't dare say no. Later, I found out the man he was talking about was the CEO of the Lu Group, only 28 years old. I was shocked. 28. In my socialite group chats, girls my age were bragging about dating men in their 40s, even 50s. Compared to that, 28 sounded perfect, so I listened carefully to my father's explanation. Apparently, one of my half-sisters had an affair with a boy toy, got pregnant, then had an abortion to save him. Because of the business partnership between our families, they wanted a replacement and I was chosen. If I could please him, I could finally achieve my dream of marrying into wealth. When I first met Lu Yu, I couldn't take my eyes off him. Rich, handsome was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Any hesitation I had disappeared instantly. There was no way I was letting such a man slip away. I decided to gamble everything. Even the one thing I still had, my virginity. After we slept together, he looked at me and said, "You're pretty good." Those words sounded like music to my ears. When he handed me money afterward, I immediately ran home to tell my mom the good news. We cried tears of joy together. Since I still had 2.5 years before reaching the legal marriage age, my mother began teaching me all her secret methods to keep a man's heart. She even helped me pick out special clothes for him. From then on, whenever I had time, I would visit my husband. Over time, I discovered something surprising. This man, 9 years older than me, was actually quite innocent. Once, when I crawled under his office desk, he even blushed. I also found out he only had one mistress, unlike my father, who cheated with anyone he could. But when I learned that his mistress had already given him a son, a wave of panic hit me. I couldn't lose him. I needed to secure my place. I had to get pregnant. So I did everything I could to have Lou's child. When I finally did, I was happy, but also anxious. I worried he might stop caring about me since we weren't legally married yet. And to make things worse, other women had heard about him and were trying to take my spot. Lou's bodyguards always kicked them out, but I knew I couldn't relax. I needed help. The first person I thought of was my mom, but she was too old for this kind of thing. So I turned to my best friend. We looked different, but we shared the same dream: to marry rich. I figured if I paid her enough, she'd agree to help. She wasn't from the Jang family anyway, so she couldn't replace me as the official wife. But when I offered her money, she demanded more. "You want 500,000? I snapped. "I only get 2 million a month, and half of that goes to my mom." She said it was her first time, so I told her, "Fine, let my husband try you for a month first." My surprise, Lou was so pleased that he raised my monthly allowance to 5 million. I was thrilled. But when my first child turned out to be a girl, I panicked again. I had to give him a son. Eventually, I did. "Thank you, sister," I whispered to my friend. "Because of you, I've secured my future."